there, and welcome to another episode of HomeTech.fm. Thank you so much for tuning in. Jason Griffin here, joined by Seth. Seth, how's it going?
Good, man. Big week in the whole automation, Internet of Things / everything world, huh?
Yeah, it's been a very big week, and actually we've got an interview lined up for this episode, which is, I feel like it's been a while since we had an interview, and we had Brian Leeners on from a company called NYCE Sensors, and really interesting conversation. If you're listening and you're not familiar with his company and you have any interest at all in the Internet of Things and the smart home, which I think is a safe assumption that you probably do, I think you'll enjoy the interview. He's got a lot of really interesting thoughts about the industry, and they're making some really interesting sensor products based around the zigbee technology that fill a lot of interesting needs in a lot of various industries.
Yeah, it was a very good conversation. All about the smart home, which we talked about a little bit about the company NYCE and about the products they make, but he definitely has a very broad view of what's going on in the industry, and it's great to have someone on that has that perspective every now and then.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I know that we have a couple of news stories that we want to touch on before we jump into our interview. But Seth, I think you had some listener follow-up that you wanted to hit even before we get into the news here.
Yeah, a couple of episodes back, on episode 63, so about 3 episodes back, I kind of made mention that the Staples Connect wouldn't work locally. Like, it had to go out to the cloud and receive its instruction set and then process it, and there was some kind of latency. But a couple of listeners reached out to me, and Bill Shepard's one of them, and sent this message in. I'm just going to go ahead and read his email because it was a good email, and I really kind of want to touch base on this a little bit too. He said, "I've recently started listening to your podcast, which I find very informative." Yes. That's my yes, not his. I did want to correct some information you referred to in episode 63 regarding the Staples Connect hub. It does not require any cloud support. All interactions happen locally. I've had a system installed for about 4 months now, including multiple Z-Wave, Zigbee, Lutron lights, controllers, outlets, and locks, and have found it to be very stable and responsive. Best regards, Bill Shepard. That's pretty awesome. I mean, I'm really envious of the system that he has.
Yeah,
because it sounds like it's awesome. And I reached back out to him, sent him an email earlier, and haven't heard back. But I'm hoping that he can kind of fill in some of those blanks as to what he has going on and what he likes most about the system. Because man, that sounds like it's a big, one of the biggest systems Staples Connect systems I've heard in a while.
Yeah, it sounds like he's having really good results, stable and responsive. Those are like 2 really good words to hear about any home automation system. And so the fact that he's, went out of his way to reach out to us, I want to thank Bill for doing that. We always love hearing from our listeners, and I think it does speak highly of the Staples Connect as well. And maybe we can get Bill on, if you're listening, for one of our listener segments, if you'd be interested in coming on. We do that periodically, where we will bring on a listener and kind of learn a little bit about you and what you're doing in the smart home and what your interests are, and kind of ask you some questions about your setup. And Bill, if you're interested, or if anybody else is interested for that matter, definitely reach out. Let us know. Probably the easiest way to do that's on our feedback form at HomeTech.fm/feedback.
And another interesting link on our website, of course, is the support link there at the top, HomeTech.fm/support. If you like the show and you feel like contributing just a couple bucks a month or even $1 a month, visit that page there. It'll tell you all about our Patreon project we have going on. It's been great. We've gotten a lot of support from our listeners, and we just really love that type of feedback too. If you can't afford to do that, don't worry about it. We just ask that you go on iTunes and rate this and any other podcast you listen to, because really that helps get us on the ratings there on iTunes, and iTunes is what matters, unfortunately. It's the only database of podcasts that anything looks at for rankings. So just go to iTunes, open it up, hit however many stars you would like, hopefully 5, and just leave some feedback there for us as well. We'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, as we alluded to in our last episode last week, and this week was no different, things are ramping up. We're entering the busy time of the year. We had Google I/O this past week. Apple's WWDC, or I think WWDC, as we've agreed to call it, because it's so much easier to say, is coming right up, right around the corner. We've got Infocom, which I think our integrators in the audience will be interested in, and CDS seems like it's right around the corner as well. But here we are, big announcements out of Google I/O. And Seth, I think you were alluding to me that you've got some thoughts that you would like to get off your chest about Google. I think Brillo in particular.
Well, I mean, it's. I expressed my concern about this on the last show, and I don't want to dive too deep back into that. But I was worried that Google was going to bring a project and not a product to the table, and I think they've actually done that. Brillo is what they announced, and as we'll find out later in the interview, this interview, we talked a little bit about it there. It's really a stripped down version of Android, and they said in the keynote that what they did is they used a Brillo pad and polished Android down to the bare essentials, and so where Android developers still could program on it, but it's a much lighter package. It doesn't need to have all the fancy things that Android has built into it, but it still has the lower level stuff that normal Android developers can still put together things for, which is good, which is great. But this project is going to be way out, unfortunately. Like, this isn't something that they're going to release anytime soon. They were talking about standards body coming out with what they're calling a weave standard to make everything talk together, and that's, oh my gosh, that's going to be like later this year before they even have that released. But really, I mean, I was kind of disappointed in this year's Google I/O. It didn't seem to bring any actual real product to the table. It was all just projects, and unfortunately, that's what you get sometimes. But the good news is, Google has thrown their hat into the ring with this. It will become a product eventually one day, in some shape, way, or form, and we'll hopefully get to use some Google Home automation one day.
Yeah, and I guess just point out really quick, in case there's anybody listening who hasn't heard of Brillo. I mean, it's a stripped down operating system for the Internet of Things, and it looks like what I read available to developers Q3 is what they're saying, and
which
documentation.
Is horrible.
Yeah.
Why tease us? Just release the thing.
Yeah, well, it's like HomeKit, which we're going to get to, which we're now starting to see some real movement on. I mean, it took a year or so since they announced that to really see some movement. So I suppose these things happen, but we're always anxious to see real action and kind of see how these things are going to shake out. Brillo will be available to developers Q3 of this year. I don't know. A few thoughts I had on it were like, well, do we need to ring the bell again? Like, we rang the bell for Brillo last week, but do we ring it for Weave now? Like, I'm a little confused as to what we should be doing here.
No, I think if we rang it, then I think we need to retroactively take it back and put it in the drawer and wait till they actually release or somebody. It doesn't have to be Google. They don't have to have a Google. I mean, we've talked about Mike Wolf's suggestion that this is going to be built into routers. Like, it doesn't have to be Google that releases a Brillo product. It could be Netgear or TP-Link or somebody that makes routers for consumers that builds in this Android Lite version and has this version of Brillo Home Automation built into that router. I'm going to hit the bell on it. That's. But I don't think it's. I don't think this announcement justifies us hitting the bell on it, unfortunately.
And then my other question was, do you think they'll ever come up with a better name than Brillo?
Oh my God. Like Android Lite, that's why I keep saying that, because it's such a better name than Brillo. But oh man,
I guess the kind of train of thought was like you use a Brillo pad to like scrub things down, so they called this polished down version of Android, and hence Brillo.
Shiny Android. Yeah, I don't know. Brillo may be better than that, but
yeah. In any event, I mean, I do think it's exciting in a sense, but it's also like one of these things that we've just over the little over a year now that we've been doing this show. It's like you get a little bit fatigued hearing about all of these platforms and protocols and everything. And obviously, when a company like Google or Apple or makes an announcement like that, it's going to get a ton of attention. But still, it's sort of like this oncoming, just continuing like expansion of different protocols and platforms, and where does it all end? So I don't know. I'll be interested to see how this develops. Obviously, it ties right into, and it looks like Google's answer to HomeKit, which we saw some big movement on this week. It was kind of, I think, caught everybody by surprise a little bit.
Yeah, and if you're scratching your head listening to the show saying, what? Brillo, that was announced? Like, that's pretty much how I feel right now, because it only took 2 days for us to completely forget about Brillo and stop talking about it, and now move on to all the HomeKit product, which evidently every Apple allowed them to all launch at the same time here on the 2nd. So tons of new product out. Well, not really new product, but product we kind of have known and been using in our homes. Is now Apple HomeKit ready?
Yeah. I saw lighting kits from Lutron. Ecobee has a thermostat. The company Elgato has the Eve Hub. These are like sensors that you can use in your home. I've definitely heard of them. Not terribly familiar with them. Insteon, big player there, and I know friend of the show Richard Gunther from Home On is watching and has been paying very, very close attention to HomeKit, and I think actually we may have him on next week once we have a little bit of news from WWDC, and we'll kick some of the stuff around a little bit more. But yeah, this was surprising. I opened up my phone and looked at my Twitter feed at one point and had about 20 notifications, and it was just different people kind of talking about HomeKit, and people seemed very excited about it. I think for good reason. We've been waiting for some time now.
Yeah, it's well, like you were saying, it's been a year since that product was launched, and it actually is a product because developers didn't have to wait for it. It was ready to go in that version of iOS. I mean, I'm just saying, it's ready to go in iOS 8. It was built into it. And the only thing we really had to wait for was the hardware manufacturers like Ecobee and Elgato to kind of build something that conformed to Apple's specifications. And there's only a couple of these devices out there. The list I have was last updated June 3rd. I have a nice little list that we'll link to on Apple's website. They have a support document, which I thought was pretty interesting. But there's also another link on that document that says, learn how to set up and start using your HomeKit enabled accessories. Well, if you click that, it brings you to a nice little page, and about halfway down, there's something not highlighted at all, but something that we've speculated would be the case, is that the Apple TV was going to be used as a hub, and it certainly is. So, done. Big Apple bell rung for that one. It looks like the Apple TV version 3, so that's the little black one, the little tiny black one, and then whatever supposedly they're coming out with on Monday, which happenstance, this show is going to drop on Monday, so we're going to be kind of behind the times on that.
That seems to be a trend lately.
Yeah. Oh well, we'll catch up on Thursday.
We certainly will.
Yeah, so you'll need the 3rd generation or later, is what it says. So obviously there is another Apple TV coming. With software version 7.0 or later, you can control your HomeKit-enabled accessories when you're away from home using your iOS device. So you can use Siri commands from the office and say, turn off my Lutron lights, and there you go. Built right into your phone, straight to the Apple TV, using it as a hub, and directly onto these third-party. This is home automation, man. This is home automation for the masses.
The future is here, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I'm glad. Like I said, this Amazon Echo that we've had, the killer feature has been using the voice control, and it's very, very limited into what it can do. And Amazon, I mean, you can ask it a question and it just kind of just not even respond to you. It just kind of gives up. But Amazon's been able to do, the things that it was programmed to do. They've been able to do very well. Siri. Now having that ability with Siri and voice home control, just built into your phone and built into your Apple TV, built into the devices that you may have already purchased, which I'll put a star on that and come back to it.
We got to get there. Yeah, we got to get there, actually, because that was one of the big things I was and actually I was surprised initially, I have to say. And then I remember actually when we were very first talking about HomeKit, I think we kind of had maybe touched on this or anticipated it a little bit. I think there's an element to HomeKit, and Seth, you might know more detail than I do, but that has to do with, I think, the security layer and the silicone that they're using, the chips that they're using to ensure a level of security that they feel like is vital to making consumers feel comfortable with the product, I suppose, is their motivation. But why it's significant is that if we just take one example, the Lutron Smart Bridge, which is a product that you and I have both kind of rave about, and I think I will own one probably someday soon. You have to actually buy a specific model. Pro Generation 2 is what it looks like. And it doesn't look like any version of the Smart Bridge or Smart Bridge Pro prior to that is going to be updatable, via firmware. This is a hardware issue. So I think a lot of people might be caught by surprise on that and maybe a little bummed out.
Yeah, we heard rumors of this as we were sitting at a table having dinner with Mike Wolf at Cedia. And he was saying that some of his sources were kind of mentioning to him on the side that there's a hardware layer, a chip that's involved that has encryption built on it that Apple is requiring vendors to put in. So that's obviously been the case. It looks like the version 2 of the Caseta bridges need to have it. One of the things I was reading, something that you actually have, the ecobee, the ecobee 2 does not support HomeKit, although the ones that they sell today do. Now, the good news is that I read somewhere that it is a module that you can swap out somehow, and it's like instead of being the full price of what, $250 or $300, the module's only going to be $140, I want to say.
Yeah.
So that's kind of good news, but not so great if you purchased one yesterday,
worse,
right?
Could be better, right? Yeah. I mean, I think for now, a lot of people who have this existing technology are probably just gonna wait, because this is the first that we've seen of it, and so it's like we're still very, very early in this proliferation of HomeKit into the market, and I think that a lot of people might just kind of hold off and see if maybe these manufacturers will, maybe some of them will offer some discounts or something like that, but it's just one of those things. I think the takeaway is just that this is something that Apple enforced. They had their reasons, and at the end of the day,
security is what it is. I mean,
it's security, and
which is good.
It is a good thing, and I just think people need to be aware of it, because it might be something that you might own a Lutron Smart Bridge Pro, and you might hear, oh, Lutron's now on HomeKit, and the assumption might be, if you don't read the fine print, that like you're good to go, and you might waste some time researching and digging around trying to make things work. Not realizing that there is a hardware limitation there.
Yeah, and to clarify, I think we've said this on the show before, but this is only the Caseta line on Lutron. It does not include the RA2. It does not include QS.
Right.
Those you can control with the Apple Watch through the app, but they are not HomeKit compatible. So you won't be able to use the Apple HomeKit home automation system. You can use something else or the Lutron app, but you won't be able to use HomeKit.
Right. Well, all very exciting stuff. Like I said, we're going to really look forward to talking more HomeKit next week. We'll have news from WWDC, and I'm sure it's going to be, if it's anything like we expect it to be, it's going to be a very big week, very exciting week for home technology fans and smart home fans, and we really look forward to sharing our thoughts with that. I think with that, Seth, we should go ahead and jump into our interview here with Brian. What do you think?
Yep, sounds good. It was a great conversation, and I think we'll talk next week on WWDC and go from there.
Yep. So let's dive right in here. We got Brian Leeners. He is the CEO of NYCE Sensors, and we hope you enjoy the conversation. We are pleased to welcome Brian Leeners, the CEO and founder of NYCE Sensors, to the show. Brian, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We look forward to this conversation. We're going to dive in and obviously talk about your company and your products and just kind of the IoT in general and the Internet of Things and how kind of sensor technology plays into this broader picture of the smart home and home automation. But, before we dive into any of that, I'd like if you maybe just give a brief personal introduction of yourself and maybe some of your background, even going back prior to NYCE Sensors.
Sure, yeah. My educational background is, unfortunately, I went to law school, but prior to that, I went to business school.
We'll forgive you.
Actually, the combination of the two are pretty good. I've been in the venture capital world since the 90s, mid to late 90s. So caught the internet revolution in a variety of different ways with a couple of companies, and now we're doing sort of the second generation of that with the IoT.
Very good. So here we are. We're talking about NYCE Sensors, and let's talk about just the history of the company. What was the genesis of the company and the idea, behind what you guys are doing?
Well, Brad, our president, presented in our boardroom back in 2007. I remember the meeting, and I had a vision that, all these connected devices would come together, and his vision was that you could use, at the time, an industrial connection technology called zigbee in order to make that happen. So my partners and I put in the founding funds to do that, and we were involved sort of on the outskirts. I was a director and things like that, but I became the CEO in 2013, and we've really started to drive the strategy forward since that. But yeah, the company was built around exactly the concept that's a buzzword right now, but way before anyone knew what connected things were.
So you guys are actually making the things that are in the Internet of Things, right?
Yeah, we focus on endpoints as the general category. So within that context, you have sensors, but you also have activating endpoints, which is something that we're starting to, step more and more into. The sensors are obviously a precursor to that because you need to collect the data. But and there's no shortage of ideas that we have for new products.
So I guess let's touch a little bit on the products. What type of products does NYCE actually offer?
What we do is connected products using zigbee. The connection technology from our perspective, and I know there's a lot of talk about that right now, and we'll talk about that later, I think, it is not as important as the functionality of what you're doing. So we started out in the sensor space, basic sensors, motions and contact sensors. We've expanded that to a larger product line. But basically what you're doing is collecting the data that builds the information set that allows you to create rules such that you actually can have automation. One of the comments that we have about the industry right now is the term home automation really isn't in place. We have connected homes, but we don't have automation. So we really focus on the automation side, and you can see that with some of our newer products, like in the HVAC space, with our new vent, which will allow your home to actually automated, start to save you money or at least give you more comfort within the context of what your rule set is relative to your controller or your thermostat.
Excellent. So I guess let's so the products that I'm a Control 4 dealer. So the products that I'm familiar with NYCE actually that I've used in the past are maybe like a contact sensor, motion sensors, and those types of things. But it sounds like you guys have quite a bit more on the table these days, and maybe a little bit more on the roadmap. I guess we'll probably touch on that a little bit in the future. But I guess what specific products are for sale today?
Right now, we are selling those products. Control 4 was our first customer, actually. So we now have, I think, 21 different customers as far as distribution and partnerships. And so we're in both the commercial industrial space and the home automation space. Within that space, the number one thing that we sell is contacts. The regular open the door, close the door, open the window, close the window sensors, and also the motion sensors from the perspective of occupied or unoccupied. How those are used is distinct to the particular customer that we're dealing with. On top of that, we have some at-point control devices, keypads, things like that. We're working with some companies, especially in the commercial space, who are doing retrofit lighting. And those companies have quite a demand for in-zone, really simple touchpads that are programmed relative to the lighting system that they're building on top of the legacy system that they're trying to make wireless. So everything we do is wireless, obviously. Everything we do right now is Zigbee. And the products that we're expanding into, we make asset sensors now, and we have a variety of those. For instance, with Lowe's, we have a tilt sensor, which doesn't just measure whether or not your garage door is up or down. It actually will measure the degree to which it is. So if someone uses a crowbar to crank it up a few inches, it'll actually give you a signal on that because it measures.
Yeah, that's a really cool product.
Yeah, and you guys have that too, and that's a tilt sensor. We've got an asset sensor coming. It's almost done. We're taking a different tact on it, but what it does is measures vibration within the context of the asset. It has various levels of intensity, so you can put it on something as sensitive as the lid on a jewelry box, or you can put it on something as robust as a bike or a barbecue. And if those things are moved outside the condition of your rules or vibrated, so to speak, then it'll trigger an alert. So we reply to the general components of the marketplace, but we're also doing the specifics with regards to our new endpoints as well. We've got our vent that's coming out this summer. We've got our patented door hinge, which is the first contact sensor built into a door hinge. Believe it or not, no one had that idea before. So we think that'll be quite revolutionary. And based on the feedback that we've gotten from some of our retail partners, they really like it. We're seeing some of the largest order demand for an early stage product that we've ever seen. And that basically puts a contact sensor into your door hinge. And we'll sell that. And we're working with Hagar to produce the hinges. We do the tech. And that will replace a single hinge in an already installed door, or you can do all three with one of them obviously being the reporting hinge. But if the door's open, boom, you get a signal. So that's the kind of stuff that we're working on. We're working on a blind controller, a string blind controller, because that's the majority of blinds. So it won't retract your blinds or open them in any way. But what it will do is it'll open and close them from the condition of light being in and out. And then one thing that we've really worked on over the last little while within the context of our basic sensors, the motions and the contacts, is building HVAC and ambient light detection into all of them. We see where we're headed in this industry, and collecting those data sets from various zones of your home is important, or your business. And so we're building all of that into our basic sensors. So by September, when you buy any of our motions or contacts or asset sensors, you're also actually buying an HVAC sensor, and ambient light will be coming into some of those.
And when you talk about, you kind of alluded to the number of customers that you have buying your technology. I want to kind of, before we jump into some of the bigger IoT concepts and things like that, I want to make sure we understand, who are your customers? And when I say that, I mean, are you guys a straight to consumer company? If I'm an end user who's interested in your products, do I, buy them straight from you? Are these products actually being sold to other companies that may be white labeling them, or, kind of doing that route? Or is it a combination of two? Like, as an end user, how do I get my hands on your product?
Because we're Canadian, we approach the market specifically from what customer demand was. It tends to be the way that we have to operate up here as tech companies. We don't have the luxury of telling people what they should do. We actually listen. So we
nice.
Imagine that.
We sell into all of the above that you described. And what I'll do is I'll give you, for instance, with each one. So for instance, with Schneider, we work with those guys, and they've got a small business systems team that we work with called Viconics. And we're inside of a solution that they've developed for small buildings, and specifically they're rolling it into the hotel space, the hospitality space. And so they have a thermostat. They wanted a zonal reading on HVAC. So they have our obviously our motion sensor, and then we put contact sensors into that as well. And they sell that product from the perspective of providing energy efficiency. And obviously, if there is a sliding door open in a hotel room, then you need to adjust your HVAC conditions to account for that, if not turn it off altogether. And we also can do that within the context of the room being occupied or unoccupied. Historically, hotel rooms put those types of technologies in the wrong spot. because they weren't designed for today's world. And so by Schneider using our products, and they've renamed them, rebranded them, they're theirs, but they're our sensors. We move into that space with them. Retail, we're working with most of the mainstream retailers that have, really gone after this industry, even though it's really early in that process. And so from that perspective, we're working with Lowe's. I would argue that they're one of the more forward-thinking retailers. They've aggressively gone after the space, so we're working with them, both on products that we have and new concepts. They've really embraced our contact hinge, for instance. And one of the reasons they really like that as a traditional retailer of things is that they can take that hinge and they can put that into a section of their store which is not IoT centric, and use that product display in order to draw people into their IoT centric space. So from a retail perspective, that's a powerful tool for them. And then we also do the industrial and service provider side. So some of our customers like Leviton, they're working on the wholesaler side, the builder side, and we've got other customers like that. And then we're also working with institutionalized entities. For instance, in healthcare, we work with a company out of Oregon called Orcatech, and Orcatech does 24/7 clinical trial monitoring inside the premise. And so they will set up their data sets with both control group and afflicted, and they use our sensors as a huge component of that 24/7 data collection to specifically monitor the degradation in the particular trials we're doing, which is related to dementia and Parkinson's and things like that. They can measure the tiniest little transitions in the afflicted person's movements, like how long it takes them to, on average, to walk from one point in the hallway to another. And they are actually enlightening their space, because people are realizing that these tiny little things would never be picked up in a normal clinical study, but they're precursors to the onset of these afflictions. So, we're helping in that space as well. So you can see we're right on the edge of things being connected and what you can do with those things. And we are far away from this being a mature space.
Yeah, no, I think well advised to kind of have your hands in a lot of different segments of the market there. And it certainly sounds like you guys have done that. I mean, sensor technology in general has obviously, as you've alluded to and eloquently explained, has really broad applications and can be used in a ton of different verticals and places where it really adds value. Obviously, as the name of our show implies here, Home Tech, we are interested in the smart home. That's our primary gig. And I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the smart home and obviously how it pertains to what you guys do with sensor technology. It's a topic we talk about a lot on the show, feeling like we're kind of at a tipping point with the smart home with, HomeKit and some recent announcements from Google around the IoT. And it really feels like kind of we're moving rapidly towards the mainstream. What role do you see, sensor technology playing in kind of the broad mainstream adoption of smart home and home automation?
It's a good question. I mean, we're deeply involved in the space. We have our views on it. I think some of the forays to attack that space or go after that space have not, I think, paid off in dividends from the perspective that the homeowner is not seeing the value proposition. So what we've done from our perspective is we've looked at what is working on the commercial side, and we're looking at designing solutions with our partners that take that sort of low-hanging fruit or entry-level pickup and take that into the home side. And where we see a real opportunity and we see it from the perspective that you're actually going to the homeowner, and besides saying, hey, if you do this, it's really cool, which is fine. There's a pickup in that in the market, and there's a certain percentage of people who buy the stuff because they really like it. And they build these systems because, they're like the early adopters in any technology. But in the general home, we've looked at it from the perspective that what will make the homeowner actually go out and make the decision to purchase. And we believe it's saving them money. And so from that perspective, that's what's going on in the commercial space. Like, it's all about saving money. These lighting systems are about saving money. These HVAC systems are about saving money. And so we believe that in the home space, the real move towards people embracing home automation is that home automation will actually allow them to save money. And then they can build all the other elements that provide comfort and well-being from a security perspective, et cetera, on top of that. But we really believe that energy efficiency is the real model that will roll out over the next 2 years. We're thinking that the consumer probably comes in 2017, 2018, and really starts to embrace that. But obviously there's a precursor to that. And the precursor to that is that everyone has to have HA capability in order to actually have an HA network. And so from our perspective, we don't play in the controller space, but we're seeing some interesting things happening with service providers starting to sell these systems from a subscription perspective. And we're also starting to see, the home networking companies, the big ones that are starting to get in and embrace home connection technology and home connection networks as just an add-on to the box they already sell you that has Ethernet and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth already in it.
It's very interesting. I think we've seen that example of going back to your earlier point about saving energy. I think we've seen that marketing message pushed from companies like Nest and Ecobee. I can think of those right off the top of my head. Not only do they offer an attractive packaging and piece of equipment, but one of their big selling features is that they will save you energy and provide kind of out of the box automation. So that's an interesting observation you guys have there. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but most of what we do, and I think Jason, maybe you have a different take on this, but we sell the convenience of it, but the energy savings is definitely there as well.
Well, I mean, it really, you're dead on. I mean, the consumer that is buying the Control 4 system, which, by the way, is amazing, and we know that because we work with you guys, the consumer that's buying that system is not necessarily always looking at the economic situation. But, when you're looking at the rest of the people out there, they generally are. I mean, if you look at the pickup in Wi-Fi technology was out there, but the real pickup occurred when people realized the convenience and actual economics of being connected, but not having to be at your desk to be connected. And so once mobility and computing combined, Wi-Fi went boom in 18 months to 24 months, and there was your hockey stick. From a Canadian version of what you're looking at. I think you're gonna. Although we're not in the Stanley Cup, you guys are.
Oh, we are. Yes. Yeah,
exactly.
Easy, boys, easy.
It's going to be a good one, though. Those are two good teams. So from the perspective of how we look at it, we see the same thing, and we're hesitant to believe that the idea of providing security to the homeowner is going to be the big holy grail of the Internet of Things in the home space. And the big issue, too, is that we see this with a lot of the players that we deal with, our partners, is that they understand connectivity, but they don't understand automation. And so, the Internet of Things, if it's done right, is going to make your life less complex. And I forget where I read it, but somebody had a really good paragraph in a really long article where they talked about how the internet has actually made our lives more complex. We have all this data coming at us and we have to deal with it with these various apps that we use. But the reality is our lives are more complex and they're more real time than they've ever been as far as communication and a variety of different things go. When you look at the Internet of Things, it's going to allow you to remove a lot of that minutia of decision making away. And so the way we look at the home in particular is that the home needs to be zoned. And these zones, they are horizontal as well as physical. And what I mean by a horizontal zone is that's security. You want that throughout your whole home. HVAC, you want that throughout your whole home. Lighting, you want that throughout your whole home. And then you're going to get into zonal things, and you're also going to get into personal things, which is when you as an individual move throughout your home, if your home actually knows who you are and it has a database of what you like, then it can start decision making for you relative to what your norms are. And that's where sensors are really key, because the sensors are the data collectors that build these home by home data sets that are going to allow your home to make the decisions going forward so that you don't have to. So that a light switch is turned off or a light bulb is turned off when it should be because it doesn't need to be on. Or if you're working in your home office at 3 o'clock in the morning and your home knows who you are and it's you working in there, then it can adjust your entire house without you doing anything.
Right.
If that starts as energy efficiency, that's great. But we see home automation being ultimately a convenience that really, if it's done right, will make your life better.
Right. We've been chatting on and off about this over the history of this show, and I think the last guest we had on, well, there were a couple of guests, but the one that really rings to mind is Mike Susi, who was over at Revolve, and now he's at Google working with the Nest team, and his thing that we talked about quite a bit were just kind of along the lines of what you said, like connectivity is great and everything, but what happens when we really just let this machine take over and like you said, actually do real automation?
Exactly.
Right now we're not even collecting that data that's needed to make the automation. So something's going to have to do that first, and all that data comes in from these sensors that you make.
Exactly. And then that's the foundation of we as beings are intelligent because we have knowledge and we have processing. So putting processing in place is one thing, but building a knowledge set is the key. And so once you have a knowledge set and you apply rules, then your home in a particular zone can be programmed that I want this zone to be completely energy efficient within a certain percentile on the basis of how much sunlight's coming in, on the basis of what time of year it is, on the basis of what the weather's going to be today. So we've got external data coming in, but we've also got home built data, which is what do these people in this home, what do they like on a regular basis? Like, what is the data set that we've collected off of them over the last couple of years that we bring into this process so that, again, we're providing efficiency, we're providing economics, but we're also providing comfort and also taking a ton of decision-making off people when they are in their home and letting the home do it for them.
Right. And I think that's the end goal, right? I mean, everybody kind of laughs and says, oh, we're going to have the HAL 9000 running the house. But, really, it would be great if we did, right? Because
it would be absolutely great. Well, my vision is that, you remember the old Star Trek episodes where they would walk around the Enterprise and the Enterprise was smart and it would know who they were and it would adjust things relative to who that person was. That's really the vision.
It's crazy how much science fiction and the writers of yesteryear, really kind of hit the nail on the head from either interactive user interface or, it's kind of crazy to go back and watch those episodes of Star Trek for one and any other science fiction.
It's all about vision.
Yeah, it was really cool. So, I mean, going back to connectivity, let's chat a little bit about that. I noticed you've said, you guys have centered around Zigbee, and there are obviously, of course, we've touched on Nest, who is using Thread, which is kind of Zigbee now. But there's a lot of other wireless standards out there. Why did you guys settle on Zigbee?
Because it works.
There we go. All right. Well, enough said.
Next question.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not trying to be flippant, but it really does work. We've been working with Zigbee in its early stages since 2007. If you look at what you're trying to do in connecting things, Zigbee's great. I mean, don't use it for video or audio. That makes no sense. And there's great technologies for those that are being, made better all the time. But I think there is some competition for Zigbee. But in our view of dealing with some really pretty mainstream players in this space, there's a real embracement of Zigbee. I think Thread is great. From our perspective, Thread and Zigbee are really the same thing. From our product side, our development and engineering side, we don't really have to do much to support Thread that we don't already do to support Zigbee. Mm-hmm. So there's some slight firmware changes, and then we talk. The space where which connection technology are you using, the space where that really plays out is in, it's in the repeaters and the controllers, because those folks are going to have to sort of go, we got to support all these different connection technologies so that the consumer doesn't have to think about that. And when we get to that point where the consumer doesn't really have to think about whether it's Thread or it's Zigbee or it's Z-Wave or it's Bluetooth Light or whatever it is, then we've reached the point where we go mainstream. And so I think the controllers are starting to realize, and the chip makers, we know that, we have intimate relationships with them. The chip makers are doing that. They're going to incorporate these standards into the units that our sensors and our endpoints talk to. So that will standardize the network. But what it'll also do, which is really good, is it'll embrace the dinosaurs that are out there. It's going to make sure that as we move forward, if someone has a Z-Wave installation, they don't have to replace it with something new. They can just tie that into their controller or whatever, their gateway, and move on and add new elements that aren't Z-Wave, their Zigbee or their Thread or their, one of these other technologies. Mm-hmm. So the quicker we get to that enlightened moment, that's great. We will support anything as far as a connection technology that our customers want to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. And, this is a conversation that obviously gets kicked around a lot right now with the proliferation of the Internet of Things. And it's got a lot of people talking that are paying attention that weren't, even just a short year or two ago. And I've always kind of been one to believe that there's never really going to be one standard to rule them all. And it's not always, it's not a battle always, like the way people can sort of paint a picture to where it's like, okay, well, it's Bluetooth versus Zigbee, or it's Z-Wave versus Zigbee. Each one of these technologies exists because they have pros and cons. And if that wasn't the case, then we would have already seen some of them go by the wayside. So if I'm understanding kind of what you're saying, then what you're saying is really the evolution is going to get there to where, these technologies are all going to kind of mature in their own right, but really where the development is going to be, might be on a different layer where the consumer then is kind of blocked from even having to see or think about that. Is that in your mind a fair summary?
That's exactly it. I mean, you look at the rollout of Wi-Fi, for instance, and we all remember, getting those first Wi-Fi routers, and you almost needed an IT degree in order to go through the process of setting it up. You need to know MAC addresses and all this stuff. And now, you go buy a Hewlett-Packard printer or a Samsung printer, and you drop it within the zone of your Wi-Fi space, and it recognizes your network. You know the name of your network because you named it, and you put your password in, and boom, you're connected. And so we need to get there, but how that connection's achieved should be relative to the best technology relative to what you're doing. So if you're putting in an audio system, you're not using Zigbee. If you're putting in a video system, you're not using Zigbee. If you're putting in a sensor system, then you're probably using Zigbee. And so from that perspective, we don't play in the audio and video space. We play in the sensor and endpoint space, where the amount of data that's being sent back and forth is nothing. And what's key for us is the other aspects, which is how long does that sensor sit on the wall before the battery dies? What's the size of that sensor so that it doesn't add another, visually intrusive element to homes and premises that are already have a lot of boxes on the wall already? And what is the ability of that technology to connect really quickly and do its thing really quickly and easily? And when you answer all of those elements within the space that we're in, it's Zigbee. I think Thread will do the same thing. And I really don't see those as being two different things going forward. I think they'll both work. They'll work together. I think the more interesting thing is what's going on in the operating system level. And you're seeing very big companies that we all know sort of playing and trying to position themselves in the IoT by taking their traditional operating systems and making them light, and deploying those into the Internet of Things, which is great because that'll allow developers to create great software, which again is about making the user experience easy so that my 75-year-old mother can put a motion sensor in a room and stick it up on the wall and, see it on the box she's using to control that, and boom, she's done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on point. And, we're starting to run up a little bit against our time here. I want to sort of close out the interview, getting a few of your thoughts on, something that you alluded to there in that last statement. And that is, with interesting things happening more on the operating system level. And obviously recently, huge news out of Google I/O in the world of IoT. And that was the announcement of Brillo, which is their new IoT operating system. And the Weave protocol, which is kind of the communication protocol around that. Can you share some of your thoughts on that? I mean, you operate in this space. I'd be curious to hear kind of what your thoughts are on these recent announcements from Google.
Well, I mean, Google's just using what they did with Android in the mobile market, and they're deploying the same strategy in the Internet of Things. And so, if you take Android Lite, and there's a ton of developers that are making apps for Android, and if they can work on Android Lite, which is really what we're talking about here, and it's seamless, then it comes down to the experience of what appliance are you using at that particular moment in order to manage your Internet of Things network. And I think this is great, but I also see Microsoft's not going to, stand pat. My understanding is Windows 10 is designed to bring, IoT under its domain as well. And obviously Apple's doing the same thing. And these are the same folks. I don't know if there's room for a new operating system or a new setup like Samsung's trying to kind of push. I will see how that rolls out. But from our perspective, the more operating systems that are coming into the space that are traditionally supported, the better it is for the space, because that means it's going to be easier for people to step from the mobile world and the home networking world into the IoT world. And that's going to allow us to do what we do. Because as I said earlier on, we can't do what we do until people have that capability in their hands. And then our endpoints and our sensors and our solutions can then really have a real impact on their lives.
Right. I'm not good at marketing, but I think Android Lite would be a better name than Brillo. But
I like Android Lite. Yeah.
It's like a light beer.
Yeah. I mean, Google's a big company and they have to make big moves in order. And Microsoft is the same and Apple's the same. But if you understand the space we're in, it's not as complex as people like to pretend it is. And the reason they like to pretend it's complex is because they can try and drop a new solution in that gets rid of all that complexity. And look at the mobile phone market. There was a bunch of operating systems, and now, we really kind of have two, maybe two and a bit. And if you look at tablets, we've got the same thing. You look at PCs, we got the same thing. I mean, my argument is that's probably something that's fundamentally occurring in any type of computing scenario relative to ease of use and the cost of development and all that stuff. So I think people can want things to occur in technology, but technology is going to evolve the way it has historically. And, it's great to be a student of history. And in this particular case, I see the mainstream players just evolving their current operating systems so that they can manage these networks.
Absolutely. It's very, very interesting times for sure. And as I just can't wait to see what, comes out. This Google I/O is pretty good. I think the product's a little bit further off, but HomeKit just came out this week too. And I mean, these are the kind of products that we're just, we've been waiting for to see what, Apple and these big players could do. And if, a year down the road when Google takes off, then if it makes as big of a splash as Apple has done this week, I think we'll all be better off for it.
I absolutely agree with that. Yeah.
Well, Brian, I just want to thank you very much for coming on the show here. And if anybody has any questions for you, or maybe just wants to find out more about NYCE in general, where's a good place to reach out and find out more?
They can go to our website, HomeTech.com, and I'm on there. My email address is on there, and fire me an email anytime you want. We want to hear what people are doing, because we haven't created most of what we do. It's been created working with other people. So we're especially Control 4. So hats off to you guys. We get to go to Control 4 situations and talk to the real sort of front end developers in your organization. They give us great ideas. It's a very synergistic relationship.
Yeah, you took the word right out of my mouth. I was gonna say the same thing, and I think it's been a really interesting conversation for me to learn about what you guys are doing and get some of your thoughts on the space in general. So I'll echo what Seth said, and just thank you so much for coming on the show, Brian. And with that, we will let you go. So take care.
Thank you very much, guys. It was really good. You do a great job.
Thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.